here at Lehigh University, and welcome to our seminar series. This is the last in of the series this fall semester, and the theme for this semester has been energy transition, specifically in certain areas of the globe. And as you heard, if you attended all the seminars, that each country tackled it in a different way. And the last seminar that you'll be hearing from is from Cindy Herron, a longtime colleague of mine when I was at TVA, and she'll be talking about a project that TVA will be working on, which kind of wraps up many of the aspects that we covered throughout the semester. This is really the work that's going to be done on the ground, be implemented by TVA, which is a wholesale distributor to more than 150, wholesale this transmitter handles the transmission of bulk electricity to 150 or so distributors. And I believe 10 distributors who are also partners with TVA in this effort. Cindy is going to give a presentation on what is the project all about and what are the goals and accomplishments that will be done over this very vast project. And so, Cindy, without further ado, you're on stage.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. It's my honor and privilege to be here today to talk to you guys about federal funding at TVA. As Rudy mentioned, TVA is the largest public power utility provider in the United States. We serve 153 local power companies. That makes up about 90% of our dollars, but we also serve around 60 what we call directly served customers, very large industrial, and then several large federal installations. So today, what I thought I would do is just talk through, give you a little bit of background around the federal funding that's been put in place and offering opportunities to utilities to reduce carbon emissions, to make improvements to the grid. I'll specifically focus on the GRIP portion of that federal funding, and then get into our strategy for as we went forward in our application in the second round of GRIP. And what I plan to do is pause at different increments just in case you have questions, and then we'll also take questions at the end. So TVA set up a federal funding project management office about a year and a half ago. And I was tasked as the vice president to lead that new organization. And TVA is a federal government entity, but we receive no dollars from the federal government. So what made the office needed to set up this office is because TVA was actually written into legislation that we would qualify for these federal funding dollars. Because in the past, we've not accessed those dollars because we were, as I mentioned before, a federal agency. But yet here we are, we serve 7 states in the Southeast region. As I mentioned earlier, we are the nation's largest public power provider. So we have a big part of that market. We also need to reduce carbon. So it only was fitting that TVA be included. So when we set up this office, our mission is to leverage this external funding in ways that align with TVA's strategic priorities. And you can see there our 7-state region. Our goal is to bring dollars in for TVA, but also our stakeholders. And that continues to be our local power companies. As Rudy mentioned, 10 of our local power companies partnered with us on the initiative that I'm going to specifically talk about today. We've partnered with state government energy offices on several applications, also B&I customers, project developers, for example, solar developers looking to bring renewable projects on the grid, and then also private industry. So our goal is to help TVA, but more importantly, to help the Valley. So what I thought I would do just really quick is give an overview of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act just so you know the background. And the way I like to describe this is the largest infrastructure bills in modern American history. We'll refer to it many times as once in a generation funding. So here you can see that these two bills have mobilized this once in a generation funding of federal funding, but most importantly, private sector funding, looking at investments. And I won't go through all the specifics in the slide, but you can see, $62 billion alone for grid modernization. A big focus is in areas, counties where they're disadvantaged, they have below average wages. But this just gives you a picture of where the different investment has been to date. And when we look at the dollars, it's massive. As I talked about, it's once in a generation funding, over $1.5 trillion. And you see the bipartisan infrastructure law on the left. That $650 billion was to existing programs. Then everything else is brand new. And you can see there broadband, water infrastructure, electric power and EV, transportation. And then the Inflation Reduction Act over on the right is all new, $369 billion. You can see a huge portion of that is to energy, but you also see, buildings, industry, transportation, etc. But the focus here is this is the investment to move towards clean energy. And when we look at this funding, this does help. And that was the purpose of this funding being put in place, to spur private investment in the utility and energy sectors. And when we ask the reason, well, why was this needed, or why was the purpose of this? When we look at the past several years, you can particularly look back at the last 20 years, and you can see basically, flat growth. But what all indications are now is load growth to the electric industry is coming. When we look at the electricity demand, whether it be offshoring manufacturing, new data centers, what we're at least forecasting to see in transportation electrification, the U.S. is going to require a much bigger, better grid to meet this growing increase for electricity. So when we look at these incentives, the purpose was to incentivize construction that will help drive commercial and industrial growth. So when you see here the cumulative growth for the manufacturing construction, you can see it's tremendous. So this increase in this American manufacture then will also increase electric load required to meet that demand. And this just focuses on the growing U.S. data center industry electricity demand. The forecast is that it will double by 2030, once again, bringing increased demand to the electricity market. And what the BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the Inflation Reduction Act, they're leveraging private investment for what we're calling American Infrastructure Renaissance. And this is looking at the EV, battery, and technology investments. And here you can see that what happens once the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, you'll see it referred to many times as IIJA, not just BIL, but you can see what has spurred private investments once these bills have passed. So it isn't accomplishing what they were hoping, with federal funding coming in, but also much more private investment. And you can see that taking place here on this slide. So when we look at all this load growth that's going to be coming on the systems, federal funding came about to help create these opportunities. So what did it accomplish, or what is it trying to accomplish? A greater resourcing sharing between private and federal, and then also looking for greater collaborations with coalitions, which is what we saw and what I'm going to talk about specifically about our application, but then also unionized labor, because we're wanting to be sure that we're bringing about good paying jobs, particularly in disadvantaged communities. It's always focusing on opportunities that's going to help build and own these modern assets, at the same time want to lower customer bills and promote regional and internet growth. You'll hear me talk a lot about how the focus of these dollars was to also specifically drive benefits to disadvantaged communities and low-income customers, particularly in the rural areas. Support the grid around resiliency and reliability, particularly around extreme weather events. And then also, with the IRA, they changed the tax code to allow electric cooperatives and municipalities, that's public power, who do not pay federal taxes like TVA, but we were also given the opportunity to get what we call direct benefits. We call it direct benefits, but it's also tax credits to those electric cooperatives, municipalities, and TVA. And specifically, when we look at how this is impacting the industry, energy industry, can't seem to talk today. You can see here, batteries, renewables, clean electricity, nuclear, transportation, efficiency. These are the primary areas that you see highlighted where my team is focused on for TVA in the Valley, as far as how it pertains to the energy industry, our utility market. So before I get into anything else, I'm just going to pause a second, Susan, just to see if there happens to be any questions at this point of the presentation.
If you have any questions, please go unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask a question. And again, your question should relate to exactly what you've covered so far. Questions for Cindy?
And there's nothing currently in the chat.
Okay. That's fine. I'll keep moving. So now I'm going to talk specifically about our Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnership. You'll hear me refer to it as GRIP, the grant pursuit that we just went forward this past year. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. As I just talked about the bipartisan infrastructure law, the largest electric utility funding opportunity in that law, BIL, is GRIP. And there's different areas of GRIP. You have topic 1, topic 2, and topic 3. And topic 1 is all about grid hardening. It's how can we help the grid be more resilient? How can we help it be more reliable? And you see some examples down below of that. It may be, substation hardening, monitoring control. Those are just some examples. Then there was another area, topic area 2. This is more around smart grid. How can we help the grid be smarter? How can we use technologies to be sure we're making it as strong as it can be? And then topic area 3 is around grid innovation. How can we help transform this industry by making high impact on innovative projects that we can then look to scale them? And when you get into all this funding, TVA can be prime, which means lead it on topic area 1. So we actually could be the prime and lead that effort. Topic area 2 and topic area 3, we can be a sub-recipient, but we cannot lead it. We have to partner with others to lead. That's what makes a lot of this funding, a little more complicated. But these are the 3 different areas in GRIP. So for last year's round 2 of GRIP, we're expecting 3 rounds. There will be another one next year. So for the second round, we led and applied in topic area 1 with 10 local power companies. And then we partnered with 13 local power companies and Tennessee Valley Public Power Association, TVPPA, they led topic area 2 for us. So as we're looking at and making all these plans for these applications, we always have to focus on what does DOE say is important. Okay, they tell us what they're wanting to see. They're wanting to see interregional transfer capacity. They're wanting us to look at where do you have system challenges and how can you also decrease your interconnection queue times to bring on clean energy. How can you increase your supply of diverse, locally constrained energy resources, and then be bold, be innovative. And there's these different areas: transform, prioritize, and catalyze. And I'm not going to go through all these specifics, but what is important, that the point I want to make to you guys is, for us, it's so important to see what is it DOE is looking for, what are they telling us, and then it's our job to the best we can to go and deliver on that if we have any hope of winning in the application. So as we went forward in our fiscal year 24, we submitted 2 applications for a total of 13 local power companies. So grid topic 1, and this is the one that I'm so pleased to say we were selected to enter into negotiations. So we've been selected for the topic area 1 award. And that's the one I will talk specifically about as I keep walking through the presentation. That was around grid resiliency. Our application was titled Resilience Amplified, Multi-Market Grid Interconnection and Disadvantaged Community Empowerment Initiative. Then topic area 2, we did apply. TVPPA was our prime. We're very proud of that application. But when we went in on these, we never thought we would win both. When you look at the wins of who has won in the different, areas, when you look at the regions, the United States, we just do not see. I think it's been maybe 2 times someone has won 2. So we knew going in, we were just trying to win to the best we could, applied on both, hoping to win at least 1. And so I'm going to talk specifically, I'll focus the rest of my time around our topic 1, the one that was successful. And you can see there a federal award of $250 million, which is the very largest award over the past 2 years of GRIP. And we're very humbled and very honored to have been selected for this award. Just to show you the timeline, down at the bottom, we started working in June of 2023 to start gathering projects within TVA, talking with our local power companies to see who was interested in coming in. And there was a method to how we gathered those, and I'll walk you through that. But they didn't even release their FOIA and funding opportunity announcement, when we say FOIA, until November of 23. So we'd already been working for several months, because that's just the nature of what you have to do. Then we made some tweaks based on what we saw in that funding opportunity announcement. And then we did not get notified of our acceptance until just this past October. And this just, once again, focuses on this selection. And you can see here the LPC cost share and the TVA cost share. And you'll notice when you add those 2 together, that is more than the 50%. With GRIP, it's at least a 50% cost share. But in everything we had seen and researched, it appeared to us that those that were being selected in many cases put up more than the 50% cost share. So we took that on, and within TVA, we let our LPCs still do the 50%, because many of them are under-resourced. They truly need help to even get this funding. And then TVA put up more than 50% of its cost share. So I'm going to keep going on this grip. So we began in June to work with several LPCs to develop these two different pursuits. We worked within our own innovation and research group to see, okay, where should we focus? We have been hearing from DOE that they really liked coalitions and they were looking for interregional coalitions. So that said to us that we did not think TVA should do it only on our own, even though we could have. We felt that it would serve our application better if we went after projects in partnership with our local power companies. And we talked about how we have 153 local power companies, and they range in size. Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, we have very large LPCs, local power companies, but then we also have very small. In fact, our smallest LPC, our local power company, employs around 8 employees. So we knew we could not bring all local power companies on board, but we were looking for a way that could be fair. So what we did is we conducted research to see, okay, who was interested, what kind of projects did they have, and then how did that meet what we were seeing that DOE was looking for, and would they be able to do what they needed to do to give us what we needed for the application. So when we went out and talked to our local power companies, and I'm going to get into the specifics of where we focused on that in just a second. But we said, okay, we're going after two different areas, topic 1 and topic 2. So what are the projects that would help you locally better your grid around grid hardening? So what are they specifically to your local community that would reduce impacts to the grid due to extreme weather and disasters? So substation hardening, automating the system, new transmission. We talked to our own TVA transmission staff, or the same thing. And then when we looked at topic area 2, we needed cutting edge, market ready technologies, ways that we could help connect the grid better, whether it be TVA to the LPC or TVA to other resources. Those were our focus areas. And for last year's GRIP round 2, we did not focus in topic area 3, only topic area 1 and 2. And so we engaged with multiple and internal and external stakeholders. And what has been amazing, and it's crazy how you have to literally, it takes everyone. So while my organization leads the application process, we engaged with over, we say 125 individuals throughout TVA. You know, personally, I think it's probably a little bit more. And then over 163 external organization and individuals outside of TVA. And you can see here in this example here, all the different groups that we worked with. We collected over 100 letters of support from various communities that said they supported, you know, TVA and the local power companies accessing these funds, and these projects would help their community. And it also, by us taking this coalition approach, it allowed us to support our local power companies that really could not do this on their own. Going after this funding is not easy at all, even for TVA, and we're a very large company, but it's certainly not easy for some organizations that just really don't have the staff or the dollars to do what's necessary to go after the funding. So we built this coalition of local power companies, but we knew we just couldn't open it up to all of them. So we very much focused then on how can we go and target where we think we need to be targeted. So we said, okay, TVA is going to apply direct, and then we're going to also bring in this coalition of our local power companies, because together we believe that we have the probability to maybe win at least one award. And what we did is we started with local power companies that had only deployed 1 or 0 no regrets technologies. We had done a survey of our local power companies about 2 years ago to see where they were at with their grid technologies. And the no regrets technologies were defined as automated metering infrastructure, having fiber out to their substations, SCADA, and outage management systems. So based on this survey, we knew we had 34 local power companies that fell into this category. That's 34 out of 153. And so we then went to all 34 to say, we have this opportunity. If you're interested in bringing any projects that fit in these 2 areas, we're open to having you join this coalition if you wish, but they would have to provide us with a staff member or a consultant that could help do the work that would be needed for the application on their behalf, and they would have to be able to have a 50% cost share. So through that work, we ended up with only 10 out of 34 in application 1, and we ended up with 13 out of 34 in application 2, in topic area 2. Now, some of those are the same local power companies that were in both, but some of them were also different. So we developed a concept paper based on everything we had seen coming from DOE. So when we looked, we had stakeholder engagement, the technical specs, what the project impacts were, community benefits, and also making sure it was going to be sourced in America. This is the work plan, and this is only just a high-level look at it. It's massive, but this just gives you a flavor of what we were working through on topic 1 and topic 2 this past spring and last summer as we were bringing things about. And I'm going to pause again before I get into other specifics just to see if I have any questions on our strategy and then how we chose opened it up to those local power companies. Any questions from anyone at this point?
Questions for Cindy? You want to pop your question in the chat box, please do so. But seeing that nobody's raised their hand, why don't you continue, Cindy?
Okay, I'll continue.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that any utility can have are project ideas. We all know that utilities, that's what we do. We keep the grid going, we build projects. But one thing we knew from everything we were hearing from DOE, what would make or break your application was your community benefit plan. So we chose in our application to say that our projects would have to be 100% located in disadvantaged communities. So when we looked at those 34 LPCs, we actually had 2 LPCs that wanted to come in, but because they were not located in disadvantaged communities, that did not meet what we were strategically trying to do. So we had to turn them away from the coalition. We were that focused on disadvantaged communities. So we used what they call the CJES tool, a climate and economic justice screening tool, to identify disadvantaged communities, and it defines them using different criteria. Then we overlaid those communities with our critical infrastructure, where our projects would be. And then we went through and detail the project siting so that we could show specific benefits to those communities, because that was part of our application. And this just gives you a flavor for 100 commitments were made to drive significant disadvantaged community benefits. I certainly won't read all of these, but just to highlight some of them, we engaged 70 plus community stakeholder groups. We had agreements with the union organizations. We've, agreed to give scholarships. We agreed to do apprentice programs. We also, when we get into job quality and workforce, you can see here that TVA made a commitment to 99.7% to use union labor. We are very unionized, and that was not a hard commitment for us to make at all. Now, all of our local power companies, not necessarily have 100% union, but 3 of the 10 said they would use 100% union labor. Then when you get into some of what the benefits of this is, you look 400 direct benefits of jobs from these projects, 230 indirect, and then 170 induced jobs created. Another part of what we have to focus on is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And there, we committed to an aspirational goal, 20% of our GRIP purchasing for these projects to use diverse business enterprises. We also agreed that we would train our LPCs and suppliers around how to also use diverse business enterprises. And we also said that we would share best practice engagement methods with tribal entities. And then part of what you have to show with any of these dollars is that at least 40% of the benefits go back to these disadvantaged communities. Well, that was our focus of our application. So here you just see some of the impacts on that, where there's 2.5 million customer benefits with particularly over 40%. We see 61% in disadvantaged communities. And when we look, there are 2,400 additional megawatts of grid capacity increases. And then one of the things that to me really stood out, and I was very proud of this, is when we look at the disadvantaged community critical infrastructure that were impacted. When we use that tool I just showed you on the previous slide, you can see here 900 in manufacturing sites, 561 schools, 56 rural hospitals, and you can see those impacts there. And we were very proud of the impacts that we could show these projects were making to the local communities. And then just to kind of let you see what some of these projects are, when you combine TVA with the local power companies, there were 84 different grid projects. And this just gives you an example of TVA's projects that were in our topic 1 application. You can see there's infrastructure around new build. For example, and I do think this did make a difference, we are looking to build the first interconnection tie line between TVA and the Southwest Power Pool, and this will give us about 800 megawatts of increased clean power that we can bring into the valley from the west. We also have a lot of radial loops where that's when you're looking at resiliency. If you lose that line, that if you only have one line going in, that's not good. So we increased our flexibility around radial loops in many of these communities so that at least you have 2 different ways to feed that community. Then there's infrastructure hardening. You can see here that looking at adding 1,200 megawatts of additional transmission capacity to the grid. Then system automation. When we looked at different switches, different controls, different relays we could use, you can see there some of the impacts that it's going to make to the grid. And we also then had some vegetation management. We could reduce tree-caused outages by up to 30% by focusing in this area. And what's important then is to be sure, as we look at these projects, that we're able to say what these projects are going to do for resiliency, for reliability, and the impacts it will make locally to these communities. And this just kind of gives a high-level summary of these benefits. I've already talked about the tie line. That will bring in 800 additional megawatts of diverse wind from the west. And when we look at the overall capacity, we're talking between the transmission and the distribution lines of about 2,400 megawatts. That will allow for future renewable additions. And when we also focus then on those community benefits, improving reliability, and then bringing in an estimated $253 million to those local communities. And then we always want to mention risk, but 98% of these projects directly mitigate future extreme heat, tornadoes, severe weather, and then 60% mitigate wildfire, which helps with resiliency and reliability both. So I'm going to pause once again before I get into the community benefits, just to see if anyone has any questions.
Questions for Cindy? So, Cindy, I have a question. This is the first time that TVA will be connecting with the Southwest Power Pool?
To this extent, we have different connections all through the valley, but this one is specifically with the Southwest Power Pool. It's a SPP intermarket tie line, which will make that interconnection much stronger.
And you said something earlier, which I just want to see if you can shed some light. You said there were some LPCs who could not join because they did not have very strong credentials, for the disadvantaged communities benefits.
No, they were not located. Their community was not located in a disadvantaged community. So they could have qualified. Our strategy was, though, just to only have projects in disadvantaged communities. So because they were a city that was not disadvantaged, then we did not have them come into this application. They could have, they could still apply for GRIP. It just wasn't going to be part of our coalition because we were focused on 100% disadvantaged communities.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions for Cindy before she goes forward? Okay, go for it, Cindy.
Good questions. Okay, so you bring all this together in what we call a community benefit plan, where you have to talk about this community labor and engagement, the impacts you're going to make to the quality jobs, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and then also Justice 40. And everything in any DOE meeting we had been in, on any webinar, this was stressed that this would be the difference in the application. And this is where I do think that because of the work that we already do with our communities, but then also the extra that we did and will continue to do made a difference in our application. And I've kind of summarized some of this already, but as I talk through the different pieces, but this is where it all came together. When you look there, we have, 5 different bargaining agreements. We have 54 good neighbor agreements with the different communities, 10 community partnership documentations. And I told you we had over 100. It's actually 103 community letters of support. But what was important, though, is for us to show this, what the community benefit plan, what the administration was wanting to do different this time is don't just take the approach utilities have in the past of, okay, here's the project we want to do. Let's just go tell everybody, get some input, and then go do it. What they really want you to do is go engage with the community to find out what their needs are. What is it they really need? Yes, talk about your project, but see if there's other things that they need that can help their community as you are doing this project. That's the difference between where we're trying to go and where we were before. And so when we look ahead for next year, we're doing the same thing now. We're starting where we were last June, saying, okay, what are the win themes? What do we think is going to be next year? What's going to be the focus? And clearly, we believe it will still be around resiliency and reliability and having to make sure we talk about the benefits. When we look at innovative, resilient transmission projects, we can see that it's becoming more and more competitive. So we're going to have to be sure that we're also showing how distributed energy resources, how all that new innovation coming about, how we can integrate that with the grid. And we do believe that this broad coalition approach will still be what they focus on. So we are looking at, when we look at and see where they brought in, you can see here they're very much focused on workforce development. Over 80% of the winners have worked with the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers. Clearly, they keep focusing on the disadvantaged communities. And just to summarize how competitive it is, in the pursuit of the total $3.9 billion that was available for round 2 funding, DOE received 325 different applications, over 7 times the amount of funding that was available. So it is highly competitive. We're so fortunate to have been selected. And what we will look at doing next year is we're actually looking and focusing in 3 different areas. We're participating in what they call the Grid Winner cross-functional working groups to share lessons learned. You can see here the different pillars that they focus on: enhancing grid capacity and efficiency, grid digitalization, can't even talk, hazard detection, mitigation, and response. And then as we're doing our pre-work for next year, we've been studying, okay, where are the dollars left? Where do we think the estimate, based on what we knew they had funded and what they have awarded in both topic 1, 2, and 3, you can see here that we think at the bottom of the page, the majority of the money will be in topic area 3. Now, we do think for next year, we're going to apply in all 3 different areas, but we are working on a partnership with the state of Tennessee, because we cannot prime topic area 3. The state can, and we are working on an application already for next year that will focus with our local power companies being much more in the forefront next year, since TVA, did have a big portion of its win was TVA. We will still have some projects, but it will not be anywhere near the extent of last year's, and we will focus on helping our LPCs. And even though Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, will partner with us to lead this, it will include our entire 7-state region. So that's my conclusion of my entire presentation. So I told you I'd be able to go through some of those fairly quickly, Rudy, but any questions from anyone at this point on any of this?
Okay, wonderful. Great presentation, Cindy. Cindy, if you were to stop sharing, you will see everybody. So this way, at least. So I want to kind of, first of all, ask students in the audience if you have questions for Cindy. Again, unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask the question, please. Students?
Hi, my name is Sajjad Al-Shimmari. I'm a student in energy system engineering. I have a question about just only you are working on increasing the transmission line and substation, or with the power plant, you are increased. They are increased if the demand increased in 2030.
This application was for the transmission system, TVA's transmission system. Now we are doing work, like for example, we've upgraded some hydro plants and we've applied for competitive grants for those and have been awarded $8.4 million. We look to make we did make applicate improvements to some other hydro and file for some tax credits that we have not yet received, but we expect to. We're also going to be making changes to our nuclear plants where we believe there will be nuclear production tax credits. But for this GRIP award, it is truly just focusing on the transmission, the distribution system, and what we are doing and our LPCs are doing to improve the grid. Does that help? Does that answer that question?
Yeah, thank you.
Questions for Cindy from the students? Yeah, I see something in the chat box. Let me see what we have. Oh, okay. What's the state of the first award TVA won? I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay, I think I just referred to the hydro award. That may be the question.
Okay.
We've applied on what they call a dam efficiency, where we got more efficiency out of our hydro plant. We were awarded $5 million for Cherokee. And then we had some dam safety projects that was 4 different projects of an additional 3.4 million. Now, we've been selected on all of those, but we're still in negotiations with DOE, and you don't actually get any dollars until you get through those negotiations. Just like with this GRIP award, we've been selected. We are in negotiations. We don't yet have the dollars, but
Okay.
those are the actual awards TVA has received. But through our partners with others, like the state energy offices, we're actually, the Valley is looking at 400 million plus. So we're very proud of those partnerships because it is making a difference for the Valley.
I see that Corey has a question. Corey,
Yes.
go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am Corey Martin, a student in the Energy Systems Engineering. You spoke about vegetation management being a part of the project. Could you explain as it relates to, is it for the new transmission lines or maintenance is included as a part of the project funding?
When we look at vegetation management, we're talking about how are we going to help better maintain those right-of-ways so that you can, keep the vegetation out of the lines. Also, where that you maintain the vegetation in such a way so that sparks from the line won't cause the wildfires. So that is directed primarily at the vegetation along the right-of-ways of the lines.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and those are captured under capital costs or maintenance is a part of the project?
That would be primarily on those costs, mostly maintenance.
Okay.
There's another one in the chat from Ken from Cole. Will TVA's investment in nuclear power be for new reactors or for extending the life of existing units? And will the new reactors be SMRs or large units?
Okay, let me talk a little bit about that because I'm going to phrase it in 2 different ways. We are looking at making some improvements to our existing large nuclear fleet, different plants, and those investments, we're still figuring all this out because we're still waiting on some guidance from the IRS, but those would come back to TVA in the form of tax credits, or we call them direct pay credits, as we're making upgrades to those plants and getting more megawatts out of those plants. But we are in the middle right now of going after a DOE funding for small modular reactors. We are in the middle of that funding opportunity right now, which would be small modular. But now in the future, we all know nuclear will be a key part of any clean energy going forward. And right now, while we're going after this application for SMRs, we're very open at many years from now, still looking at large fleets if we need to. It will be what's more cost effective for the valley at that point. Once those growth dictates that we need new assets, it will be whichever one is more cost effective.
Yeah. Something in the chat box. Will TVA provide opportunities for students to do internships in any of your projects?
Well, right now, TVA has many internships. So if any of you are interested, I would encourage you to apply for our internships. We also have, our shop is located in the innovation and research group. And I know we have, many different, whether they be fellows, whether they be international students, we're very open to internships. Just need to make application and apply.
Okay. So something along the same lines from Wendy Fong. Great presentations and congratulations on a successful grant. This is an awesome award. Is TVA open to research partnerships, and what is the best way to collaborate?
Now, I think you're meaning just in general on that, probably.
Right. Yes.
And yes, we are very open to different partners around research and innovation. So, for example, while it doesn't fall within me, I am in the group, and this is led by Joe Hoagland, Dr. Joe Hoagland. So, you and I both, known Joe for years, but we partner with different universities. We partner with the various labs. We're very open to partnerships. And then if anybody wanted to reach out on that, we have different folks we can contact you with depending upon what the opportunity is.
Okay. So is this a partnership opportunities? Is this available on a TVA website or DOE website or?
No, this would be, if you're looking to partner with TVA, it would just be having a call, say with, Brad Chadwell, Kurt Jotty, some of the folks, just so we could look for what are the opportunities there. We'd want to be sure it aligns with what we're calling our transformative initiatives, which is around the grid, the electric vehicle transportation, but we would just be a dialogue to start the conversation.
Okay, good. Questions for Cindy? Raise your hand, unmute yourself, and introduce yourself. Questions for Cindy? Cindy, one question, I know having worked at TVA, your LPCs are, almost separate entities, as it were. But this would call for a lot more collaboration, cooperation, and looking at each other's systems very carefully. Is that something? How is that addressed? By the different parties, TVA and your LPCs. How did you guys address it?
Now, are you talking about specifically with this application?
Yes.
Okay. So just for everybody to understand, TVA has what we call the wholesale transmission grid. And then our local power companies, 153, sell directly to retail markets throughout our 7-state region. And they are locally owned, locally controlled. TVA is their regulator, which is a little different. But through that, we make sure that they have enough dollars the rates are what they need to be. They use money appropriately. The city can't come in and just take money out of the electric system. So what we do is we make sure that we are looking ahead to see what kind of projects do these local power companies, what are they bringing on? How's that going to impact our grid? So we have throughout the years, we always have planning sessions with the local power companies to see what's coming on their system, what kind of load growth they're projecting. That is a part we're wanting to get much stronger and better at, which is part of why we've got this initiative called a regional grid transformative effort, sorry. Now, in working with these 10 specific local power companies who are very under-resourced, they are small, they are rural, and as I mentioned earlier, it would have been very difficult for them to do this on their own. So as we were going through this process, we did not dictate any specific project that they had to do. All we said is it needs to be sure it's helping reliability and resiliency in your local community, but you tell us what project will bring that most value to you. And we did encourage them, if there's projects you're hoping to do, let's say 5 or 10 years out, if you could, get 50% funding, would that help make the decision to do them quicker? But it was just, we did not dictate any specific project. It just had to meet the criteria that we qualified for around resiliency, reliability, and grid hardening. Is that getting at your question, Rudy?
Yeah, does.
Okay.
Yeah. Questions for Sue? Put it in the chat box or unmute yourself.
One thing I will add, just while folks are still thinking, we started out with, I think, I'm going to say 13 LPCs for topic area 1, and was even working through the process. We would send out different spreadsheets for them to complete. Different questions they had to answer. We provided all the infrastructure, but they still had to do work. It wasn't like it was, without effort on their part. And we had 3 of those drop out. Even with all the work we were doing, it was just too much work for them to do on their own. So I just say that because this effort, while it is tremendous and these dollars are going to make such a difference, at least what we have seen is we have to have coalitions to help some of the smaller ones, or they just cannot access this funding.
Questions for Cindy? Okay. So Cindy, one last question from me. You obviously this particular work that you're doing with your LPCs are the ones which are smaller, and the ones who can justify a number of criteria that you have right now, disadvantaged communities and so on. Once you've gotten this project completed, are there ways by which other LPCs in your system could kind of pick up on some of those results and see if they can implement it, at their place? Is there a plan for that, or will that be in the works as you go forward?
Now, we have an effort ongoing within TVA. It's been ongoing for probably 2 years, called our Regional Grid Transformation Effort. And it's where there is a group of local power companies, I'm going to say probably 10 of them, working with TVA, the Innovation and Research Team under Dr. Joe Hoagland, where we are looking together with our local power companies to say what is needed on the grid as we look ahead into the future. We call it Valley Vision. And through that, the key technologies were identified that you saw, the no regrets technologies. And now we're hoping to get to a place where we can share what we would recommend would be the minimum capabilities. And we'll be glad to share all of the lessons learned from everything that we are doing through this effort. But it's even bigger than what we're doing. We're seeing other local power companies come in and share, this certain technology has helped us reduce, outages numbers. They're sharing among themselves. so that sharing will continue through this work we're doing, but in general, overall. The other thing that I will mention is one of the things that my organization has done as we've looked at going after federal funding is we have provided tools to, well, it's all 153 local power companies, but I mean, not all of them want to access this funding. But we have provided them with tools where they can go after this on their own if they choose to. So we've provided them with, as you're going through an application, here are the win themes you should consider. Here's how to do a community benefit plan. Here's how to do, what you should focus on in GRIP. So while only 10 were in this application with us, we've provided those same tools to many others who are also applying on their own.
Again, a related question is, among your LPCs, are there some which have a high penetration of renewables?
There are, it's in different pockets. If you look over in North Carolina where Blue Ridge Co-op is, they had a law there where around renewables, and they had incentives. So there's a lot of individual solar installation on homes in that area. Now, what TVA, we are, just for everybody to know, we provide 100% of the power to our local power companies, but we did make agreements with them about 3 years ago to allow for flexibility up to 5%, and that's primarily around solar. So we are seeing several of those, like Chattanooga, Knoxville, begin to move to where they're having, up to that 5% of the renewables on their system. But that's, it's different by the different areas, and part of that is based on incentives also that's been in place, particularly over in North Carolina.
Thank you. Any other questions, chat box or otherwise? Please submit it in the chat box or unmute yourself. Okay. Seeing that there aren't any more questions, thank you again, Cindy.
Well, thank you.
Revealing.
I hope this is what you were looking for. It's my honor and privilege to be here to talk about this. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
First of all, it's a massive award. In some ways, some of the experiences that you would go through would be valuable lessons, as we continue on this energy transition, and you look at some real world implementation issues that you would face. I think in some ways, that's the mission of TVA too, to be kind of first in the block looking at the tough problems. And so technology innovation is a big part of their kind of DNA, as it were. Thank you again. Thank you all. This is the last, as I said, last seminar for this semester. And what a way to end it. And Cindy, you just kind of added a lot of interesting information. So really what we do with presentations such as yours, we have the students and they will have to put together a Zoomcast of what they heard and basically share it among the group. And we've kind of, it's basically part of their assignment and part of their grade. So this is a very valuable talk that will go towards, the library that we're building up here in Energy Systems Engineering. Thank you all. And we will be starting again in the spring semester. It'll be late January, I believe, when we start with the very first one and go all the way up to the end of April. Again, hope we see you next year. And best of luck to all. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.